I'd love to take this into the church. Just looking at the terrain of what's taking place in the world globally now, especially the prophetic ministries. Why do you think there's a lot of flack that is being received, or backlash, for lack of a better term? The backlash that is being received by prophetic churches, why do you think that is so?
The backlash in terms of?
The backlash in terms of we'd rather do without the prophetic within the church. We rather prefer the traditional route of, let's say, traditional Baptist church, just a church where you come, preach the word, and we all go and leave. Why do you think there's a lot of backlash with that?
Yes, no, I think the prophetic has always been disorderly. But with the spiritual gifts, you realize that most of the time you need a lot of apostolic order in order to govern the exploration of the spiritual gifts. Even from the Bible, if you look, most of where the Apostle Paul does a lot of governing in terms of rules and what must be done, what must not be done. It is the Corinthian church. You realize that he has a very, amongst his scriptures, amongst his letters, the letter to the Corinthian church becomes the most, that has the biggest rules, that from fornication to adultery to different kind of things, and even to the exploration of gifts, the explanation of gifts, follow the way of love, especially the to prophesy. You understand? So you realize that he speaks about tongues and everything. In the book of Corinthians, he goes more into the depths of the things of the Spirit than any other of the other letters that he written to the Ephesian church, the Galatian church, and to other churches. And the reason so that he has written all of that to the Corinthian church, it is because the Corinthian church is the most charismatic church amongst those other churches. So that is why he also regulates that one must prophesy and other must interpret. And one must prophesy and others must judge. Then he says, for the spirit of a prophet is then subject to the prophet. Like that. So he then speaks about all of that, even in tongues, that another one must speak in unknown tongues. But if he's speaking unto the church, one must interpret what the other one is saying. But if he's not speaking to the church, he's speaking unto God, then he's edifying himself. So the outruliness of the prophetic ministry has always been there, that where you find a lot of charisma, most of the time you find a lot of disorder. But the most important thing that many people now should understand is that in the midst of disorder, it does not mean that the prophetic is not necessary. It does not mean that the prophetic is not important just because it comes with a certain level of disorder. It just means that everywhere there's a prophetic grace, there must be an apostolic covering. There must be an apostolic covering, so that as the apostolic covering comes to give order, it comes to give order, it comes to make sure that the prophetic, it is done in the right way. So you don't cancel spiritual gifts for the sake that there's a lot of disorder. Now, the problem about it is that the people who most of the time are gifted are people who have not invested themselves more into the doctrine. So you realize that the person got fascinated more of the gift. When they got born again, they were exposed into giftings or into the supernatural, but they never spent more time into governing themselves through the word of God. So the word of God to them is just a bus pie, it's just a passerby tool in order for them to explore their gifts. So you realize that even if they are preaching to observe the protocol that you must start by preaching before you prophesy, before you heal the sick. But you realize that the delight of the word is not the emphasis of their ministry. They delight more into the gifting. Now, once you lack the balance into both, then that is where problems start happening. That is where chaos start happening, because the word of God is the regulator of the gifts of God. So you cannot have the gifts of God without the word of God, because if you don't have a sufficient word, into your heart, then you have a lot of gifting. Then the gifts that are within you, they are vulnerable to be used by every influence which is from the devil, that he can use you because you don't have a sufficient word. Remember, David says, for your word I've hidden in my heart, lest I sin against you. So meaning that the word of God becomes the tool that keeps you grounded in the Lord.
Sure. Sure. There's a lot that you've just given there. And I love the emphasis on the word of God. I really love the emphasis on the word of God because I really think that nowadays that's something that's getting lost in the church, where the focus is on how powerful, how anointed, how great a man of God is, or so much power in that ministry. But the word of God is something that's almost just being pushed to the side. But I'm glad it's slowly creeping in again.